In today's video, we're discussing goaltender interference in the NHL. It's been terribly inconsistent this year with the calls we've seen, so I thought it was worth a discussion. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. Alright, so as we all know here, we're talking about NHL goaltender interference. Does anybody even know what this is anymore? I certainly don't think the NHL knows. I highly doubt a lot of the referees know, and it just seems to be a topic that just keeps coming up over and over again as a major inconsistency issue with the league this year. Obviously, it's already been discussed. I know over the All-Star weekend, Gary Bettman mentioned that they were going to basically be putting out a memo to the referees saying not to overthink things and need to look at things and just kind of, make a decision based on what they see, not to overthink it and take too long. Because we've seen some of these reviews dragging on and on and on, and it just takes forever for them to come to a decision. And a lot of the times the decisions they're coming to just don't seem to make any sense at all. Obviously, depending on what teams are involved and what fan bases are commenting on the situation, we do see a variety of comments as well, either for or against the call. But I think something that everybody can probably agree on here is that inconsistency has been rampant through these calls all season long. Now, the call that we're mainly going to discuss today, you'll see a picture of it here behind me, was involved with the Vegas and Winnipeg game. We saw Vegas forward James Neal basically break his stick over the helmet of the Winnipeg goaltender, and then the puck goes in right after, and that's not interference. I don't get it. How can hitting the goalie in the face with your stick hard enough for it to break not be considered goaltender interference? This makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, if you didn't see that play or you haven't caught the highlights of it, there is a link in the description showing the highlights. So certainly take a look at it and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, there's another link in the description of a video that I found that somebody put together with highlights showing a lot of the worst calls of goaltender interference so far this season. You're going to see the one from Connor McDavid, which made no sense to me at all. There's the one with Austin Matthews, and there was one involved with the Penguins and the Wild, which that one made no sense really. Like, I think all of these goals, the result should have been different than what the outcome was. Like, I don't get it at all. Makes zero sense to me. Now, the ones in the other video with Matthews, McDavid, and the Pens Wild, those are cases where I think the goal should have counted. Now, in this case here, the goal went in, it did count, and it should have been the opposite. Like, I don't understand it at all. So what I want to discuss with you is, do you agree that there is a terrible inconsistency this year with goaltender interference? So let's start by leaving that in the comments down below. Secondly, what do you think the NHL needs to do to fix the system here? These reviews are taking forever. The referees are obviously under a lot of pressure, and they're obviously second guessing a lot of the calls on the ice, which make no sense. So do they need to tweak the rule and maybe better define what the rule is? Or do they need to take it so that the referees do not do the review themselves? Maybe it goes back to the war room in Toronto and they actually have another party who are consistently making all the calls instead of, if you think about how many referees work in the NHL, that's a lot of different takes on how this rule's interpreted, and it seems to be the biggest issue. If you have a consistent small group of people that are reviewing the plays and making the calls, I think regardless of if we like the outcome or not, we should at least develop more consistency, which should at least solve part of the issue here. But I think the NHL, my opinion on it, is that they need to define the rule a little bit better. We are seeing such crazy minor non-existent contact being called interference, but yet then we see a case like this where he gets a stick in the head and it's not interference. So clearly, most of the cases this year that we've seen that have been crazy have been goals that have not been allowed because of contact with the goalie, and the contact is so minimal that it makes zero sense to me. Even if they don't want to call this goaltender interference, there's clearly a penalty on the play. At the very least here, when Neal's stick hits the Winnipeg goaltender in the mask, that's clearly a penalty. I don't understand. I've heard some of the argument that technically it wasn't goalie interference, but because they missed the penalty, that it can't go back and call a penalty on video review. But still, at the end of the day, I don't care what you call it. You can call it a slash, you can call it a cross check, you can call it whatever it was supposed to have been. he's still interfering with the goaltender. So do they need to define the rule better, or do they need to make the war room be in charge of making these calls? What do you think? It's a crazy situation. It deserves a discussion. I want to hear from you and see what your thoughts are. Personally, I like to see it go to the war room so that they're consistent with the calls, and probably tweak the rule a little bit as well to better define what goalie interference is. Don't forget as well to follow us on Twitter. You're going to see our Twitter handle right here. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. All of our links are down in the description to those accounts below. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.